So good morning, dear colleagues. It's really nice to be back to ICD. I did it in 2015, a great experience in New York. I've met many people there, but I was a shy student at that time, master student, and I didn't do any presentations at that time, even though that Rosie encouraged me to do that. I said, no, I will be a careful listener. And I was a careful listener. I have many contacts also with current photographer of yours. So that's good. I still have wonderful pictures, and I hope he will manage to do good pictures from this time. So once again, thank you for inviting me to participate in the Berlin Economic Forum on Sustainable Economies and Responsible Investments. Mark already presented what I'm doing now. So I'm a PhD student. That's a hard and tough life of PhD student. Good thing that you always meet many people with whom you can discuss all your topics, even though that it's called like variability of human rights obligations in business. But I do hope that you may be engaged in such a topic later. So I would like to start my presentation with famous words by Eleanor Roosevelt, where she once have said that where after all do universal human rights begin. In small places close to home, so close and so small till they cannot be seen or map on any map of the world, yet they are the world of the individual person. The neighborhood he or she lives in, the school or college he or she attends, the factory, farms, or office where she works. Such are the places where every man, woman, or child seeks equal justice, equal opportunity, equal dignity without discrimination. Unless these rights have meaning there, they have little meaning anywhere. So most of you probably know what is human rights. I would not go to the notion of it, but just to remind you that usually, and also in this presentation, human rights will be understood like the idea that people have a right to be treated with dignity. I will not go further to all the details, but usually we understand, and also I am a lawyer, I do hope that we will understand that in the same level, human rights are often expressed and guaranteed by law in the form of treaties, customary law, general principles, and other sources of international law. So why should we talk about business and human rights? Firstly, we have to understand that the growing reach and impact of business enterprises have given a rise to a debate about the roles of responsibilities of such actors with regard to human rights and have led to the placement of businesses and human rights on the international agenda. International human rights standards have traditionally been the responsibility of governments. That's the usual stuff, that governments have to do something with human rights. Either they do like it, they don't like it, but at least they have to go further and to have a basic understanding what are human rights. And also governments aim to regulating relations between the state and individuals and groups. Businesses is not understood as an actor. And however, now there is a certain shift between this doctrine, and we're starting to think that probably businesses may also be responsible for human rights protection. And also that change is not very easy because there is a distinction between a few famous lawyers like Professor Cassese, who said that there is human rights obligations only for states, not for businesses. A few others or lawyers say that no, it's possible that transnational corporations may be responsible for businesses and for human rights because their businesses spreads all over the world, and sometimes national states cannot find the ways how to protect human rights, especially in global chains, global supply chains. With this presentation, I want to show that there is an idea that business world should think about human rights as a kind of holistic lens, showing the impacts that companies have on people. there may be positive impacts, not always negative impacts. Positive impacts may cover such things like improved worker conditions, like health conditions, improving safety conditions, equality in workplace and innovation, etc., etc. But in many ways, we have to think about negative impacts such as pollution, environmental accidents, health and safety failures, and underpayment of workers, etc., etc. So, if we will think about possible human rights issues in business, I just try to show a few examples. It's not, even though that there is a dot in the first on the last infringing rights to data privacy, it's not the fullest. You can extend it a lot, really a lot. But so usually the term human rights is used to cover a wide range of impacts that company, its contractors, its suppliers, or business partners may have on people and their human rights. So it may be, as I said, forced labor, child labor, underpayment of workers, and different things. For a long time, we have many initiatives that could help business to overcome these negative effects, like the OECD guidelines for multinational enterprises that set some, not rules, but principles, ideas how the business could conduct in the right way. There was ICO standards. There is also EU strategy on corporate social responsibility, but most of you know that corporate social responsibility means that the business will think what he can do in that field, but nothing more, and he may violate human rights, but they will say, but look, we violated that, we let's say our payments are very low, but we created an opportunity for our workers' children to go to the theater. Let's say that also would be a corporate social responsibility. In Lithuania, we have a major provider, a shopping mall, have a range of shops all over Baltic states, and they usually all the workers, all the people who are taking everything to shops, selling them and everything. Usually we get minimum wage. But their children can go to theaters, to summer schools and everything, and that they are going with the flag and saying, look, our business is very social responsible, we're trying to help our workers and everything. But it does not mean that they do not violate human rights. So there is even more strategies. I will focus only on one. It's on UN guiding principles on business and human rights. There is a certain, let's say, shift, like a step forward in the protection of human rights in business. United Nations guiding principles were developed by a team led by the UN Secretary General Special Representatives for Human Rights and Transnational Corporations and Other Businesses Enterprises with the help of Professor John Rudgie. And it's called to implement, the idea was protect, respect, and remedy framework. It's a famous framework of that helps to cover human rights issues in businesses. However, there is no hierarchy between all these initiatives. You can apply all them. So, coming back to those three pillars of UN guiding principles, UN guiding principles are concerned with addressing adverse human rights impacts by business enterprises. let's say, then the ability of an individual or group of individuals to enjoy their human rights is removed or reduced by the action of an organization. And also, United Nations guiding principles apply to all nations and businesses, enterprises without exception. However, United Nations guiding principles do not create any legal obligations. Except European Union. European Union already had the strategy that all EU member states have to put the United Nations guiding principles in their national action plans in their member states. So almost half of the EU member states have national action plans with the focus on business and human rights. Usually they show what is already done, how, let's say, workers' rights are protected, how we focus with the environmental issues, and sometimes in these national action plans there is also an idea what member state is going to create later, let's say in 1 year, in 2 years, in later perspective. So the idea that's very nice that state has a duty to protect. It falls that state must follow international human rights obligations, have to implement in national law, and also to create a legal framework of that all these legal obligations should be followed. There was also the second pillar is respect, that exists corporate responsibility to respect. Businesses have to show their interest in protecting human rights. And the third pillar is remedy, that all victims have a possibility to access effective remedy, like, let's say, it may be go to court, maybe go to some non-judicial frameworks to protect their rights. So usually we can show some key risks in businesses, and in 2016, KPMG interviewed executives with responsibility for human rights at 11 major corporations worldwide. Companies were asked what actions they take to address human rights issues, and the interviewees listed most commonly mentioned. So regulations and standards, that's one of the problems, that increasing regulation is a key driver for companies to address human rights issues and report on their activities. So if there is no regulation, usually the company will not start anything related to human rights. For example, in Lithuania, for a long time, there was no need to submit a report about corporate social responsibility. Now, the biggest companies that employs, let's say, 500 people, must to submit a report annually. And now we show the results, how the companies what are doing in the field, what's the minimum wages, what's the wages in the companies, what are the safety conditions, etc., etc. Also, the second risk exposure for the companies is reputation and relationship. Customers increasingly expect their suppliers to comply with human rights policies and demonstrate how they are proactively addressing human rights issues. So usually, if customers are not buying something because it violates human rights, it may affect the change of the company on human rights policy. For example, most of us likes to go to H&M, Zara, and other shops because, like, they're trendy, they're not very expensive, etc. But then H&M was known that H&M buys cotton from Uzbekistan, from Kazakhstan, and there are many cotton which is produced with child labor, there was a huge protest, and some customers choose not to buy such a product. And H&M started to rethink human rights policy. We tracked their suppliers list, how the supply, where the cotton is grown, who is working in the fields of cotton and everything. And also they created labels like this product was created sustainably. So that helps for customers to choose, and you see that it's an example that reputation for businesses is very important. Sometimes also the impact comes from NGOs and media. That's so increasing scrutiny from NGOs, campaigners, and the media is an important driver. Particularly for consumer-facing companies that are arguably most exposed to brand damage and loss of market share. Some things like labor unions are increasing their attention on human rights issues and labor rights in particular. So if the company or if the state creates labor unions in the sector, usually the company have to change their view towards human rights. Also, investor and lender scrutiny, increasing scrutiny of human rights performance by investors and lenders is an important reason to take action. One company acknowledged it had lost a substantial investor due to allegations of child labor in the supply chain. It's as an example of H&M, I have said. Also, company purpose. Many companies said that addressing human rights issues is simply the right thing to do. Failure to do so would not be in line with the company's purpose, culture, and values. So that's a very nice part, but it's not that usual and in everyday life. But it's still there are many companies who are trying to do their best. So what is also important is making a positive business case. Despite the risk outlined above, we should keep in mind that human rights performance is not just a matter of prohibitions or a problem that needs to be fixed. In fact, strong support for human rights can serve as a part of companies' overall strategy for sustainability, providing a valuable opportunity to gain competitive advantage, strengthen business relationship, and support steady growth. So after this, what I have said, what actions should be considered for the companies who thinks how to change their human rights strategies is set a tone at the top by appointing the specific board member with responsibility for human rights. Usually that's a good thing and a good start. If we know a person who thinks about the human rights situation in the company, that's a way to go further. Also make sure that CEO and board members are clear in their commitment to respect human rights. That's important. If the CEO thinks that human rights are important, definitely it will be important in the company itself. Build human rights action into annual business unit plans and ensure that accountability resides with heads of business units. Integrate human rights risks into corporate risk management process. Establish a clear line of reporting to the board on the most severe human rights risks and impacts so issues can be rapidly addressed at the appropriate level. What must be said, there is no standard approach in developing human rights governance. Each company is influenced by a multitude of factors such as operational management structure of the company, business and national culture of the country where the company has headquarters, and the length of time that the company has been working on human rights. I will try to sum up a few things that we could fit the time. So support for human rights is a complex business issue that involves almost every aspect of companies' operations, its contractors, its suppliers, or businesses partners, its relationship with employees, the surrounding community and government. A human rights policy that is well designed and diligently implemented can help a company do the right thing while still managing business risk and preserving its social license to operate. And usually, most of you have seen the movie Godfather, and you know the famous quotation, "It's just business, nothing personal." So if someone will say that famous Mario Puzo quote, just ask, are you sure about that? So thank you once again for your attention. And if you have any questions, I will try to ask them, or just we can discuss during my break. Yes.
So I'm studying economics and development. So a big part of my studies is talking about corporate social responsibility
Yes.
and human rights, especially like in sub-Saharan Africa, South Asia, and Southeast Asia. And I just have like a question, because you're like an expert and you're doing a lot of research in this area. So do you personally see like kind of capitalism as like a root problem in this whole thing? Because like the idea that businesses are there for making a profit means that a lot of times they are trying to exploit other people, and until they get a bad reputation, like for example Nike or Zara or H&M, like you mentioned, then they tend to not really change. So do you see that as a problem, like personally, or do you not really consider that in your research?
Thank you for your question. When I was preparing for this presentation, I was a little bit afraid that probably there will be economists who will ask any questions about my research. It's not part of my research itself, because I'm mostly working on the new convention. I've mentioned UN Guiding Principles on Business and Human Rights, and United Nations are preparing the convention in that field. So I'm working only on the legal aspects, how the convention could look like. From a personal perspective, I do not see any better ways how the global market could work without capitalism. But probably that's my personal view, because I'm coming from Eastern Europe, and we have somehow faced, especially my parents faced communism. So we are always very thinking, what should change capitalism? But we have to think about the frameworks, about the ways how the capitalism could change in a way. If we are creating we're creating legal regulations. If we follow the legal regulations, probably we will see the change of the capitalism itself. There are many countries that made huge steps, like Denmark, Sweden. They applied all such principles like UN Global Compact, UN Guiding Principles on Business and Human Rights, and there is a small change, but it's let's say a smart step forward to create a better world. So I hope that I answered to your question. Yes.
As we know, China is affecting the ecosystem in many African countries, especially Algeria,
Yes.
Congo, Tanzania. So do you think that the cooperation between the African Union and the European Union by promulgating ordinances condemning, this masquerade in Africa?
Mm-hmm. That's a deep question. It goes to the very roots of this problem. Now in the world we see only, let's say, 4 major global economies: China, European Union, United States, and others are less just others. Yeah.
I mean emerging countries.
Yeah, emerging countries we do not see, and China. China is doing one thing. They are doing investment in any countries, but let's say in Africa, and it's very for Africans it's good because it brings money. But usually they just take only the resources. They do not bring the technologies to the countries. Do not do anything more. And
Excuse me, I think you didn't understand my question. I'm saying deteriorating
mhm,
the environment.
yes,
When I say Congo, I mean forests. And the Chinese are very active in that region. I mean, it affects the environment,
yes,
and the ecosystem.
yes.
Okay? This is why I'm saying that. Do you think that the cooperation, international cooperation between the African Union and Europe can promulgate, let's say, law ordinances
Yes.
to make an end to this masquerade?
Yeah, I do believe that such a cooperation could bring good things to the region, and European Union is trying to create such a framework of neighbors that if Africa is okay, Europe is also feel better. But the problem is that we have a different approaches. Different approach from European Union. We have different approach from European Union and China. China do not follow any rules. They do not say anything to African. You deteriorate your environment. It's okay for us. Just give your resources to our country. We will pay money. Do anything. European Union is trying to follow the rules, and that's really hard. Then we are within European Union. We know how it's hard to follow the rules. So the same is for Africans. Even though that your economies are emerging, you have the politics. And politics usually thinks shortly. We need money, and we have to show something to the people who vote for us. And if we will say that, oh, look, we have a good thing, European Union, just follow the rules, and maybe in 10, 20, 30 years, maybe there will be a certain transition. So that's the first major problem. If think very globally, we could talk about such a thing as Marshall Plan, which helped Western Germany to revive from the ruins of the Second World War. We can think a new Marshall Plan, which is created now for Ukraine, just to boost their economy. So probably we should think globally about certain plan to Africa, not only about just sending money, but thinking about how teach the people to certain legal traditions. Why rule of law is important. Why constitution is important. Why elections is important. Why democracy is important. So there is a nice comparison from the 18th century. The person who worked with Jefferson, he said that autocratic regimes, and also sometimes that at that time absolute monarchy, is very good ship, because you easily can go to any direction where you want. But at a certain point, that ship will be ruined. Democracy is I don't know how it's in English, but like a small boat with slowly going to a direction. It has many storms and everything, but it's really hard to ruin that boat. So there is in that China, EU, and Africa question. There is also a need from Africa itself, from the countries itself. What do you want? What do you want from Africa Union? Would you want to have just a political cooperation, just to share the ideas? Or you think about the certain economic integration? That's really hard questions. And the politics definitely will have to admit, now African Union is a good organization. Yes, it joins its members, but we do not see it in the world. If you take like small countries of European, and no, it would be the same. Lithuania is not seen in the world, but if we say that Lithuania is a EU member, and as an EU member we are more visible, so probably in Africa region it would be the same. But we have to overcome certain problems that comes from international organizations.
Yeah, my name is Esteban.
I know Esteban. We've met in 2015.
Well, yeah, because of the great venue in New York with around 200 people, I remember that. Yeah, I would like to say a few things that I am not agree with you at all. First of all, it's something personal. I am not just a photographer, as I said in the head of media, but anyway, this is not important. Yeah, regarding your presentation, I am not agree about a few things that you say right now. First of all, I would like to mention that you say that the Marshall Plan was created just to boost the German economy after the Second World War. Well, that is not really true at all. I always thought that the Marshall Plan was part of an agreement between German and Americans since they surrendered in the Second World War. You know, you surrender, you stop your activity, German. So some of you will go to South America, and yeah, you will give us all the information that we need in order to fight against communism. It was not only just to boost the German economy. I mean, usually a war has a winner and a loser, and usually the loser is giving something to the winner, but is trying to get something, you know. So it's what they got. I mean, you only have to see what is happening, for example, now in Venezuela. Of course, Maduro is not the best person ever, but if we really think about democracy, just to point to what the US is doing with Guaido, and we only have. I'm gonna finish.
I don't know.
The only thing that we have to think is why
Somehow it locked.
countries like Europe and the US are pointing Guaido is the main reason, but because with that they could control better the oil that it has Venezuela, because Venezuela is one of the richest countries in the world regarding oil. So at the end, when we are talking about democracy, at the end, in African countries, I think the focus is wrong. It's not to boost anything. And at the end, everything is about control. And at the end, everything is about the throne and the puppet. So you always need to find a puppet in every country that will be happy to sit in the throne, but will take the pants off in front of the rich countries. So if we don't start any argument, any study from that perspective that everything in this world is just because money from the elite, the powerful people, we are wrong. We are wasting time. We are talking about the sex of the angels.
Okay. I will not probably to answer. There is no question. Just your opinion. I would say that that your approach to democracy itself it's a little bit cynical. And this was not idea to talk about the Marshall Plan. It was just an answer to the question, and it was just example, and you took it only. Yeah, but you took it only from the context. But okay, that's that's good. Good point from that perspective. But I do not believe in such things like that you can change all the world, like, and there is Muppets, and also that someone is playing all the games. Sometimes you need just a small change, and the small change comes through such a things that I have presented, and business and responsible business could be that small change in a certain environment. I do not say that it's a way to resolve all the problems. That's for sure not. But in some ways, it may be a good example, and there is shown some practices how it works in real life. So I would probably that's time's up. So thank you.